eucalyptus.
Okay, so we're going to look at composting today, and in particular two types of composting. So what you're seeing in front of you is all the kitchen waste I've gathered over the last year and put into a barrel with drainage at the bottom so I can make compost tea. And I've been doing that, adding the liquid fertilizer to my watering can. As you can see, it's very rough. There's lots of eggs in there because of the chickens. In fact, have an overload of eggs that we can't eat. But just have a quick look at that. There's lots of avocados, mussels or oyster shells, things that will break down much more gradually over time and provide a more balanced additive to your soil. There's probably loads of seeds in there as well, and whatever comes up will be quite interesting. But let's look underneath. And here, you may have seen from a previous video, is in fact the human manure. And I'm protecting it from exposure to other animals or other humans. I'm just keeping it there. I've used it in the roots of new plantings, or basically around trees and not upon the herbaceous. Okay, with that in mind, I will go into the food tunnel. Alright, so the thing about being a student of nature is that you're continually learning, and eventually you'll come to a point where you have a lot of good ideas and a lot of good answers, and this creates, if you can congeal it all together into one, a good philosophy of life. If you don't have enough knowledge, then you probably just are nothing more than an opinionated person who thinks you're right. And this is the importance of education. Nature will teach, but you need to get enough education underneath your belt in order to create that philosophy which is holistic, or which is consistent, self-consistent within itself. So let's look at this. There's different methods of composting going on here. And I'm using years of experience of working with not just Mediterranean soils, but worldwide climates. So the first thing I've done is I've taken all that kitchen waste compost, which is quite rough. I haven't sifted it. I don't need to sift it because I want a longer process of decomposition to happen within the soil itself. So effectively what I've done is created top dressing. So I've done all the new plantings of, say, tomatoes and cucumbers there at the back. I've had a good load of this compost. And then you can see an old skin, how crumbly it is, of an avocado. And certain plants have different types of root systems also. So when you're looking at these cabbages, the reason why these are thriving, and I never really feed them at all, is because they're not just drought resistant, but they have these incredible lateral roots and surface feeders, and they can extend quite far away from the actual stem of the plant itself. So they can find nutrients at longer distances. In a normal system, we're talking about, in a normal natural ecology, we're talking about deep root systems, which is why in permaculture we talk about tap roots. Tap roots bring up nutrients from deeper down the soil surface. But that's not good enough on its own. It has to drop those nutrients back to the surface of the soil through leaf litter. Now, I'm sort of emulating that here with straw and with top dressing of compost. So basically I'm intervening and doing that part of the natural ecology, which wouldn't normally happen here because I don't have enough perennials and enough growth to create an ongoing natural ecology, and which some people have called synergistic gardening. Now, synergistic gardening comes closest to creating a natural ecology, because what it's actually doing is working with longer term recycling within soil nutrients. So I'm going to show you some things which are really quite interesting. So when you get a balanced soil, and these soils could be desert soils, there could be tundras, Arctic soils, Mediterranean soils, temperate soils, boglands, anything you can imagine. What nature actually does is create balance within that soil over time, and it does that through bringing in or inviting, to a certain degree, plants which will help recycle the nutrients and the minerals within those soils. And over time it creates a balance and a symbiosis between many of the species that actually live and thrive in those environments. So here we're looking at a chili, and then if I pan left, we're looking at a pepper, and these are perennials. Okay, so they are, if you could look at the leaf structures, they don't actually drop that much leaf litter, so I have to add top dressing. They do have a certain amount of drought resistance, and they have an ability to live in Mediterranean climates really well. So, bearing that in mind, I don't necessarily have to feed them continually. We're not creating annuals here which thrive in 1 year and produce a good crop at the end of it. Here I've grown enough perennials of peppers and chilies to be able to pick from various parts of the garden. And then behind it, what you see are maybe the young cucumber plants. Now these are much bigger than the other 12 I've planted elsewhere. And why is that? So these are thriving, and they've all had the same conditions basically, but something else is going on. This is symbiosis. This is what's going on underneath the soil, which you can't see. Now right in the middle there, I don't know if you can notice it, it's in fact a grape. It's a vine. Now I haven't done any analysis here, real analysis or study, but that grape, you can take a look at the top of it, is absolutely thriving. Here it is. It's thriving. It took a few years to establish, but once established, it seems to be so happy down there. At times I actually forgot about it because it died right back, but now it's thriving, and it seems to be affecting the cucumbers around it. The cucumbers here, I've grown an extra, I would say, 2 inches at least, and look much healthier. Or is it the symbiosis that's happening with these Solanaceae plants, which is the pepper family, or the potato family? So, that could be a really good combination. Solanaceae, vines, cucumbers. We'll see. Welcome to the theatre. Aptly coined by one of my volunteers, and the sun has come out. That's called Destination Africa. So I wrote that 2015 when I cycled through the Sahara Desert and into the Gambia. So this is interesting. So when I emptied the kitchen compost, I put the new stuff back at the bottom of the barrel to start anew, and took out all the old stuff, as you've seen. And there was a lot of rust coming out of the barrel itself, and that's mixed in with some of the bottom compost. So I'm going to show you that. Look at that. That's like rusty compost. Now it's interesting because even though there's still bits of metal in there, maybe, I'm assuming there's iron in that. And you scientists out there can try and correct me on that one, please. But what we call hierro here in Spain. And I've put it underneath these citrus plants because there's a tendency for citrus plants to go yellow. And that's, in many cases, is an iron deficiency. So I'm assuming that there is a lack of iron in some of the soils here. So I've actually deliberately used that small portion of rusty compost for my 4 citrus plants which go down the middle of this food tunnel. And here's a better example of that yellowing process. Admittedly, citrus does suffer from a lot of insect damage in this country, and people spray a lot. I don't know how difficult it is to find organic oranges around the world, but they certainly do suffer from insect damage. And the example I was talking about is, like you see here again, this is rusty compost. So I'm hoping that's going to leach its nutrients back into the soil and into the root systems of these plants. And underneath that is human manure, by the way. So I'm going to water, and I want to see the effects of what my compost is doing. So when I water, I'm effectively simulating rain. Now, what's important here to remember is that when you get much wetter climates, nutrients are carried also horizontally through the surface of the water. But here, in very dry climates, nutrients can easily be starved from a particular area. So I'm not going to do much more other than just water over the top and hope with time that the insects and the moisture, the condensation, the dew in the morning, that type of thing, will eventually seep the nutrients down into the soil structure. But with time, because I have a no-dig system here, with time, this synergistic gardening has become very beneficial to most of the plants which are living here, because I can see, just by observation, what's living well with what. And I have too much cabbage, for instance, but then I'm giving that to the chickens. All it needs now, really, is a bit more shade, protection during the summer, and I've probably got my perfect system. And I could probably grow a lot more. I mean, there's certain parts of the garden which benefit growing onions, certain parts of the garden which benefit growing tomatoes. You get to know that. The garden becomes an extension of yourself, of your personality. And what's really interesting is that when I get volunteers here, they actually give me gifts and that type of thing. So I've just picked up a box of eucalyptus and made myself a eucalyptus tea, and just wondering what the benefits are of eucalyptus and what's the benefits of having a eucalyptus tea. And it's a bit like compost, you know. It deals with secondary causes in a way. It tries to inhibit those diseases from accelerating and passing on and causing other diseases to happen. So eucalyptus tea helps breathing. It's good for the respiratory system. It improves your immunity and other infections. It's good for wet coughs especially, which is something that's been going around in Europe for a good long time. I had the 100-day cough myself, and when I went through Italy, I mean, I cycled and I still couldn't get the stuff out of my system. So there are real benefits to having an understanding how ecology reflects human lifestyles. Why do we have herbal teas? You know, why do we eat good food? It's because what we're trying to do is prevent diseases from spreading in the first place and take out those secondary causes. Okay then, so with that in mind, I wish you the best. Remember, you can find me at soteriologicgarden.com, and I'm just going to do what nature does best and pretend I'm a rainstorm. There we are.